Hi, welcome to the December meeting of Yeah Right Scarlet Quill Society, where we finally get around to ruining everyone's childhood or adulthood, as the case may be. Because we are talking about, let's call them holiday typical topics, I do want to put a holiday typical content warning on this video and on this discussion. We are going to talk about religion. We're going to talk about fascism. We're going to talk about brutalitarianism. We're going to talk about familial manipulation, probably bereavement. Eating disorders may come up, discussions of bodies, really whatever horrible holiday related thing you can think of, that may come up. The good news is what may also come up is everyone's cats. We have a very, very cat heavy panel today. So be prepared for some animal cameos to tide you over. I don't know.
I just realized that we're like ZZ Top, where three of you have cats and I am cat.
I wasn't going to make that joke, but I would like points for not making that joke. I did think of it though. So also on the subject of difficult discussions, Yeah Right is virtual, but as we move towards virtual connection and virtual community, it's still important to acknowledge that we do have a connection to the land. And so Yeah Right's major nexus of connection with the land and our duty of stewardship is to the land that has been the traditional and current home of many, many people. We're at a confluence of several rivers, some mountains. So the peoples who lived and live here are the Multnomah, the Wasco, the Cowlitz, the Cathlamet, Clackamas, the bands of Chinook, the Tualatin, Kalapuya, the Molalla, and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. So that's quite a list. And in recognition of the breadth of our debt and the length of that list, Yeah Right donates to the Naya Family Center as part of our land acknowledgement. And Naya provides culturally specific programs and services that guide people in the direction of personal success and balance through cultural empowerment. And if you're watching this, it would be a great time to take a second and think about whose land you are living on and what debts you owe to that land and to the people who share that land with you. And to that end, I'm going to actually invite our panelists to give their own land acknowledgements if they want. And as threatened, I think I'm just going to go alphabetically and start with Genevra.
All right. I'm here in Roanoke, Virginia, in the ancestral land of the Yasong and the traditional hunting grounds of the Yasong, the Saponi, and the Occaneechi. The name of the city reflects this, being derived from a Powhatan word meaning things rubbed smooth by hand, such as the raw Roanoke shell beads those peoples used for adornment and currency. The city, like the state, would not exist without the wealth that was built on the mass kidnap and enslavement of human beings, a filthy institution still reflected in the local naming conventions for our buildings and our streets. Where I am, there is no shortage of old plantations, romanticized and currently in use as expensive romantic getaways and trendy wedding venues. And today I'm thinking a lot about how we can't just put new wallpaper over something crooked and have a structure that holds substantial weight. How ameliorating flawed premises has to come from the foundation, where all we get is the same story, repeated with the same flaws and only slightly different characters.
Jennifer always gives me the best segue. I should have definitely saved you till last. Kat, you're next alphabetically.
Hi, as is traditional for me by now, I am not acknowledging where I am geographically for personal security reasons, but I am going to say that I live on stolen land. If you're watching this, you probably do too. If you think you don't live on stolen land, then you probably live on land where somebody else is excluded and marginalized. And so I think it behooves all of us to remember the context we live in, especially as catastrophic things are happening all over the world now, including in places that think of themselves as safe. People are short of water, shelter, food, vital access to being able to communicate and get their stories out to the world. And so I'm delighted to spend the last part of, I'm calling it the Western hegemonic calendar year, discussing how we can do better.
Thank you. And Rashaleen?
I am in Brooklyn, which is the unceded land of the Canarsie and the Marichuic of the Lenape. I also want to acknowledge that I am in what is Weeksville, which was one of the oldest free Black settlements in the United States. And both what we have done to Indigenous people who we have to return stewardship of the land to, but also people who are survivors of chattel slavery, and what we've done to their neighborhoods through gentrification, I think is something we also really need to be mindful of, especially in a neighborhood like the one that I live in.
Thank you. And now for my most awkward segue yet, happy holidays. Now, and I do say happy holidays judiciously, like we all understand that what we're talking about is Christmas movies, even if there's this thin veneer of something else over the top of them, whether it's a thin veneer of like secular gay culture or a thin veneer of there's as I was doing my research for this panel, I looked up the plots of every single 2020 Hallmark Christmas movie, and one of them is called Love Lights Hanukkah, and the main character discovers that she's Jewish through a DNA test the day before the events of the movie take place. And so this is about her discovering Judaism. This is a Christmas movie. Like, let's be very, very clear about that. That is not the most awkward plot among the 2020 Hallmark Christmas movies. In fact, in Christmas Comes Twice, there's a woman who let go of the love of her life 5 years ago. I don't even know how you can let go of the love of your life. Like, was she fishing? But a magic carousel is about to give her a second chance to do it all over again. That's one of 5 carousels apparently in the 2020 lineup. So we're going to get a little time travel, a little so when I say like this is a Christmas movie, I should front that I've never seen a Hallmark Christmas movie, and I'm depending on my panelists here. Rashaleen, you're a romance writer, surely you've seen one or two.
I have seen several. And I've also seen like all the ones related to Hanukkah, because I am Jewish. So there's always this moment where all the Jewish people I know are like, hey, there's a Hallmark Hanukkah movie. And then we watch it and we're like, oh, that's not right. And there's actually 2 things I want to say about that. And one is, I don't want to say Hanukkah is a minor holiday. Depending what strain of Judaism you come from, your feelings about it are different. But it's not a holiday we tend to travel for. It's not the one that we have the big family gathering for, except that that's what people's work schedules in North America tend to be like. So to me, the idea of let's get Jewish diversity in here by having a Hanukkah movie feels super kooky, because it's not what's important. Like, to me, all the drama that happens in a Christmas movie for us would actually be like a Passover movie.
That's a Passover movie, right?
Yeah.
But that's in competition with direct competition with the Hallmark Easter movie.
Right. So that's always weird. And then the other thing that's weird about the DNA test, I just want to say that. So one side of my family is Ashkenazi Jewish. We know we're Jewish. We've always been Jewish. And the other side of my family is Italian Catholic, but converso. We were people that were Jewish and then became, for our safety, Catholic at some point, rather far back, a couple hundred years back in my family tree. So the idea that you can be Jewish without knowing you were Jewish is both a thing and a dangerous thing. And I can't believe Hallmark went there.
Oh, they went right there.
Yeah, that, and I knew about that one, but that feels particularly yikesy, particularly in this moment.
Because I also want to jump in about this moment and Jewishness and DNA, and note that it's illegal to have a DNA test in Israel unless you have a court order for it, for reasons that are beyond the scope of this panel. But boy, Hallmark, that's a whole,
I mean, I feel like
stable of bees, I'm gonna call it.
2020 Hallmark movies were very much written in the context of who was president at the time and his own particular relationships, possibly with that.
I mean, we also have to think about when the 2021s were written, and the 2020 with a 0 movies were written and produced,
Right, so
because
those are 2017 or 18, right?
they were probably
18
written
maybe.
in 18 and they were probably shot in 19. They
Yeah.
might have been shot in 20. Those things get shot really fast. That's the other thing that I think has to be acknowledged when we talk about this genre of stuff, is they're made very quickly. And because they're made very quickly, even if there are good intentions, nobody's double checking anything.
Yeah. Okay, so I promised we were gonna ruin everybody's childhood. What's wrong with the Hallmark Christmas movie? What isn't wrong?
Aside from the fact that apparently they took everything that was good about It's a Wonderful Life and stripped it out, all the political commentary out, and turned it into a pan to fascist ideas of Kufke Kinder. Aside from that, wait,
Now
we're
let's
supposed
start
to have
there.
a panel.
No, but let's start there. Like they're formulaic. They're formulaic. Is formulaic a bad thing inherently, or is formulaic a bad thing contextually?
I think it has to be contextual. I mean, when I make chocolate chip cookies, I don't want different chocolate chip cookies every time I make them. I want to eat 9 or 10 of them in a go, and I want them to be exactly what I want them to be, which is chewy and a little salty and having sat overnight in the fridge before I bake them. Like, I'm very specific because I want that experience. If I want an Oreo, I want the Oreo experience, and I don't want one of the 9,000 variants. I want just that. So I feel like inherently formulaic's not necessarily a problem, because while there's times that I'm going to want to experiment and I'm going to want to add things, you know, maybe I'm going to put bacon in the cookies this time or whatever. That's not typically what we go to this genre of movie for. We go to it because we're looking for a particular comforting, you don't necessarily have to be conscious on the couch the whole time to understand what's going on kind of experience. So just inherently, I don't think the fact that it's formulaic is bad. It's when the formula is twisted at some point and everybody builds up on it that we start getting trouble.
I think also it's important to remember that this is not the only genre of incredibly formulaic movies. If you watch a murder mystery, you expect it to be solved at the end. And what may be problematic about that is how the story is framed, who does the solving, how suspects are treated, etc. But I do think sometimes there's criticism in the wrong place of this genre because of formulaicness, when lots of genres have formulaicness. It's just how it gets applied. And oh my gosh, that cookie analogy is amazing. Thank you for that.
So I think that so I want to pull back a little bit about formula right now, because while I agree that it's not that it's a formula that's the problem, I think that the issue of the formula having a myth of completeness is part of the problem, right? It reminds me of the what is a meal conversation. And what is a meal is very, very culturally specific. It may be specific to your family, but a lot of people don't ever interrogate that. And what is a meal becomes a thing. And then when somebody who has a very narrow idea of what is a meal ends up in authority, now you start having all sorts of problems. And this is where it's one thing for there to be a particular holiday movie formula. It makes it easy for the writers, it makes it easy for the viewers, but it constrains the kind of stories we tell. And it also reinforces the meta frame of this is goodness and everything outside of that is not comfortable, familiar goodness. And for the people who need to have something made familiar for it to be less scary, now you've set up this absolute fortress wall around inside here is good and outside there is scary and bad. And so this is why I think that, yes, it's wonderful to have things within the formula that explore up to the edge of the formula. But I think when we're interrogating the formula, we need to look at what is the formula actually trying to get us to understand and accede to. So, you know, and we already alluded to the whole
let's
idea
take a look
that
at let's take a look at this formula then. Oh, sorry,
right.
Kat.
So this formula I was going to say is we're going to talk about winter holidays and we're going to disregard the fact, except for tiny exceptions, that half of the world experiences this month in the entire other side of the seasons. which, you know, our Southern Hemisphere friends are often vociferous about, that there is a religious holiday that you go back to your family for, that the ultimate goal in life is that you go and you find a romantic love partner and introduce them to your family, and there's a probability that this is the time you're introducing them to your family, for instance, is one of the common parts of this formula. When you start interrogating it, some people get really upset because they never stop to think that that's not actually true for everybody.
Right. So like one of the issues just with the Hallmark Christmas movie is the goal ending, the target that all of these movies are aiming for. And they have, you know, wildly different plots. Maybe you have the single mother plot, maybe you have the person rediscovers their passion for music, or their passion for horseback riding, or their passion for being a Christmas tree farmer plot. Maybe you have person goes back and meets their high school sweetheart. Maybe you have, you know, person goes back and discovers that while they're pretending to be with their divorced partner for the holidays, that they shouldn't maybe have gotten divorced in the first place the way the kids told them not to. But all of these things are aiming at, you have a monogamous partnership with the support of at least one partner's nuclear family. And I'm trying to think if it's prioritized the woman's nuclear family, right?
Seems to be most of the
Mostly,
time.
but the other part of it is that there's a back. The entire genre makes it so that the real home of the heart is the small town you came from.
Or
They're
the small town you went to. Because the other plot is journalist has to go to small town and discovers.
But it's real and wholesome and lovely are these small places away from the coast and the center of things. The minority of the stories are about coastal communities, unless they're, you know, often some cute
Right,
New
it's like
England
a
fishing
seaside
village.
tourist town is a possibility, but like woman
But
moves
big city bad is a
discovers that
consistent
Yeah,
trope.
great.
Yeah, the real America trope, just as somebody who has like lived in New York City my whole life, like there is no story that every one of these stories tells me I have to leave the place that I am from, like just hands down. I also want to note that, you know, all these stories are about a happily ever after. And as much as one of the issues that happens in the genre way beyond these movies is that a lot of people who have been romance readers for a very long time say that if a book or a story or a movie doesn't end with a marriage and a baby, it's not actually a happily ever after ending. The amount of labor we've had to do in the genre just to say everybody's HEA doesn't look the same has been massive, and how much that has widened isn't that much still, right? Like, especially like talking about the monogamy, and also the way monogamy is portrayed in these films in particular, I don't think is realistic. You know, like I'm friends with some of my exes, relationships are complicated. Even if you are monogamous, sometimes things overlap in ways that are awkward, at least emotionally. And because of the commitment in these movies for no one to ever do anything controversial or bad, or that like you wouldn't want to tell like your, you know, very conservative older relative about, or your church about, and it is assumed you are a member of a church or your family is, makes what is possible so narrow. It's not just, oh, it's a monogamous happily ever after between straight white people. It's even tighter than that.
Well, and the farther you get from straight white people, and correct me if I'm wrong, the tighter you have to get to that marriage and a baby.
Yeah, to make it seem like they're just like everyone else. Yeah, and that can be very, very awkward, both in terms of the script because it doesn't reflect real people. You know, like yes, there are very white picket fence. Like Pete Buttigieg. Okay, like he's a nice white guy with a nice white husband and adorable twins and, you know, whatever. But many queer lives don't look like that. But those queer lives don't get to be in the Hallmark movies, even when there are queer Hallmark movies.
Yeah, for sure. And then the relationships, like let's talk about like the relationships and whether the relationships work, because one of the big tropes is the opposites attract trope in the Hallmark movie. You have to pretend that you're okay being with or working with someone who you loathe, who you have had nothing but bad experience with, and at the end of the movie you're married with a baby.
So when I was hanging out around a lot with people who were in what are often called women's shelters, but are domestic violence support residential situations, it was really interesting hearing how many of these people's backstory was basically, I attempted to LARP or cosplay a Hallmark holiday movie, and boy, it turned out horribly because life is real. And I I entered into that situation and drifted out of that situation with that same sense of absolute fury at how much these stories set people up to reenact these, not out of any malice, even just out of believing that if you perform the formula, then all the other parts that are supposed to come with the formula will accrue onto you in the same way that if you follow the cookie recipe, then you get a cookie.
And kind of going back to your initial statement on, you know, how these frames affect how people behave. So, personal backstory: I grew up in a town with 8,000 people. I haven't been home in literally half my life, and I departed at some velocity. And when people find that out about me, the second question is always, well, don't you want to fix things? Because it's in their mind that there is this perfect story, and that my health and my happiness, they think I must be unhappy because that isn't the story to which my life adheres. They think that ultimate happiness would be returning back to that 8,000 person, now 10,000 person hometown, and making things right with everybody that I knew there, my family, and, you know, maybe the boy I dated back then. And it's like, no, I departed there for good reasons, and that would be a nightmare. But they literally cannot comprehend the notion that the question is attempting to put me into a dangerous space. That the people around people will hold up the idea that, well, if you just talked it out, if you just went back, if you just felt how it was, then surely things would work themselves out for you in the future.
There is a theme of compulsory forgiveness in these movies. Like, no one ever has a conflict that isn't positively resolved. You never see somebody enforce a boundary and be like, I told you how I feel about this, and there we are, and let us civilly keep very far away from each other. And that never happens.
It only happens in sometime early on where you have the stormed out and had to cause a scene in order to get to the reconciliation scene in the next act where, oh, I'm so sorry, but it's the mildest of walkouts usually.
You know,
There's very, very few blowups that are
somebody online brought up,
end.
And I think we passed this Tumblr around in our chat before we started the panel. The only person in a Hallmark movie who respects a boundary is the ex-boyfriend.
Mm.
The one who she comes back, she's in her hometown and she's now with the lumberjack or the fireman or the Christmas tree farmer, and her wealthy fiance or the guy who was going to propose to her the next day before her mom got sick and she was called home or whatever, comes to see her and support her because he hasn't been able to get in touch with her, or she walked out of her life, or she left a note that was very concerning. And he's like, so Jennifer, and she's like, I'm with Todd now. And he's like, we were going to get married. And, you know, sometimes he'll be upset. Sometimes there will be a scene. Occasionally there will be a violent scene to justify why she would not want to be with him and why he's not a good person. Because, you know, the standard trope is just, if you want your audience not to like somebody, just make them do a whole bunch of bad things. Like, let him drop an N-bomb or two. He's going to hit a girl. What else? Oh, he's going to like kick a puppy when he's crossing the street. Like literally, and those things obviously are not equivalent, but they're just gonna stack every possible bad act they can think of onto this person, so that you discard them as a human being, which is its own harmful trope, and something that I deal with a lot working in justice reform. Is, you know, once you call somebody a felon, you're literally reducing them to the worst day of their life, and they never get to move beyond that. But so he's the only guy, and then he leaves. And he's like, okay, well, I hope you're happy, and he leaves.
So the other ex-boyfriend in these stories is the one that wasn't interesting enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's a lot of when you interrogate these stories from a POC perspective that might come from a not romance relationship context, so that we end up discussing these things in the, well, my parents got raised in this other tradition, I got raised in Western hegemony watching these holiday movies, and so I have other things that I was trained into kinds of stories. We notice that the guy that's being dumped is the one that our parents would have chosen for us in our cultural context, because he was going to be the good provider and the nice guy. But often that guy got good grades and he's not very interesting because he never picked up a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
He only learned how to get the fabulously good grades. And so there's a lot of simmering resentment from a certain kind of guy over, these movies are just about telling me that I don't get to ever have the girl because I'm not a buff, burly lumberjack.
And that is something that I've had a problem with these movies in general. I mean, I've watched quite a few of them. I grew up watching them, and, you know, sometimes they're still comfort watches. But the notion that, first of all, the guy who is particularly stable is the one that you don't want. And these guys are not always, occasionally they are the abusive or belittling ex, but very frequently they have their feet very much under them. There's a house, there are expectations, but tied to that, the notion that, okay, so that person is finished. You can't expect them to ever pick up the guitar now that they're done with their PhD, because they're done now. They're complete. And that is the person they're going to be, and that's the person they're always going to be. So there isn't any, in so many of these movies, there's the notion that the girl is going to go off and learn new things and have new experiences with this new guy who does stuff. And that if she stayed with the other partner, she also would be finished and there wouldn't be any more growth.
There's also this idea implicit in that, is that once the characters find their happiness, that they don't continue to develop as separate people or do separate things. Like, she can get married and still travel by herself if that's a thing she wants to do and is able to do, and vice versa for him. Those things are real in people's lives, but there's never a sense that these people are ever going to socialize separately or pursue separate hobbies or be individuals. They become this like new Borg-like unit. And I think that's also really problematic, especially because so many of these movies tend to focus on people who are very young to decide, this is it, this is who I am for the whole entire rest of my life.
Plus, don't a lot of the plots, I want to be real clear. It's not that I wouldn't watch a Hallmark movie. It's that I'm like allergic to secondhand embarrassment, and there's a lot of secondhand embarrassment in Hallmark movies. Like, I watch problematic media, I assure you. It's just not that.
I mean, I watched While You Were Sleeping a ridiculous number of times through a summer. It's very clearly a holiday movie. I would argue that it subverts a lot of the classic tropes, but not all of them, which is what makes it comforting and yet tolerable for me. And so, yeah, I am also not on team consign all of these into the back of the oubliette along with the other, horrible movies that, why are we watching them outside of a film crit class? And that is not what I'm voting for either. Just let us know what we are absorbing.
Right. Yeah. Because even if you're watching them, ironically, you're taking in this material. And a lot of this material is like, one of the things that struck me, the thing I was going to get to, that actually I think While You Were Sleeping ties into, is that in Hallmark movies, a lot of the plots involve a woman with a goal. She has a career She has worked hard to get where she is. She has achieved some modicum of success. She's not usually 20. She's usually like closer to 30 and doing well. Like she's up for a promotion. She's up for an assistant VP position. And she has been very clear with everyone in her life that this is what she wants. And by the end of the movie, she's having to walk back on all of that because what she really wants is to have a Labrador retriever and dig wells. And While You Were Sleeping kind of comes out the other way, right? Like she finds somebody who's actually willing to support her and support her dreams and her goals.
I love that movie because it's messy. It is poking at the fantasies that we are encouraged to build for ourselves, especially when we come from lonely childhoods. And that it subverts the dashing guy, and it does do a bunch of, oh, actually he's an absolute jerk. But that's because she needs to see, and she gets to see it, as opposed to the other movies where it's often off stage and we see it as the audience member, right? As opposed to, I saw my boyfriend saying the thing. There's all sorts of reasons why our prototypical character breaks up with her old life and finds wholesomeness. But I also like the complicatedness of that family is the other thing that I really love in that story. And quirky family is another one of the classic tropes of a Hallmark movie. A lot of family movies. I like the fact that this story actually allowed for a range of cynicism, religiosity, different religions, and it's a very Chicago story. It is a Chicago suburb story, but it acknowledged the fact that there was a big city. And the big city wasn't actually presented as the villain.
One of the Christmas movies that I actually like, and is still also super problematic, is I actually really like Love Actually. And I know it's a mess. Like the class structures in it are a mess. The disability rep is a mess. There's a lot of things that are a mess. But the thing is, all the characters are also a mess. And people don't have to be perfect to find love in it, and don't have to have all their conflicts resolved to find love in it. So that's something I don't see elsewhere, even though that movie is, again, its own set of like nightmarish things. I wanted to talk about the quirky family trope. I don't know who else on this panel comes from a quirky family. I do, and it's not fun, right? Like it's not cute quirky. It's like my dad changed religions every 2 years, and therefore the holiday season could be very dramatic because, you know, was Jesus happening? Was Jesus not happening? How did my Jewish mother feel about it? Was she going to talk about that? What other random relatives and religious leaders would come to dinner? Who knew? It wasn't actually funny. And I do feel like in the Hallmark movies, quirky families are always cute versus, and sometimes the heroine is inappropriately embarrassed by the quirky family, but sometimes our families are quirky and it's not a good time. And I do wish there were more movies that showed that, like, no, actually the stuff is difficult and weird sometimes.
I remember watching the Royal Tenenbaums and being like, that's how you show a quirky family. Like, that's not fun for any of them.
I think so. The interesting thing about a quirky family story is if you set up a wholesome, not quirky family as the good ones, now you've just gone completely into outright textbook fash, right? And that some of this is that 1950s black and white sitcom, Andy Griffith and the little bucolic community story. And that's always the specter. So it becomes difficult to tell a story of quirky it's a question of what are you fighting against and what do you inadvertently hit by responding to that, because usually when all you're doing is trying to do a flip, you end up with what N.K. Jemisin calls a discrimiflip, right? You can't just discrimiflip something. You can't say, okay, we're just going to reverse the valences on who's good and who's bad. You end up with a different kind of cartoon, and that cartoon actually reinforces the original one. So I think what I really am always hungry for is messy is all sorts of things, good, bad, and
Right.
wonderful and wretched and all of that. And so I kind of reached the point of having a longing for, what would we rather see? But I don't know where we're at, and I
I
didn't try to
This
host the
is
story.
starting to feel like our natural segue point, isn't it? We've started talking about, okay, well, we know the tropes, we know the underlying tropes. And here's what hurts. So what doesn't? How do you do a I I guess I'll throw it open to any holiday, because we were talking about like holidays where you come home to your family, holidays where you get put in awkward positions more than other holidays, holidays that have more opportunities for meet cutes. How do you do a movie with love and family and holidays and some awkwardness, um and maybe even that central misunderstanding where somebody doesn't hear or does overhear a conversation and refuses to communicate like an adult, and has to walk that back 15 minutes later. My wish list includes communicate like an adult. If you think that your partner or your hypothetical partner or the person that you are falling in love with has said a horrible thing, maybe just say, hey, I thought I heard this. Am I missing some context? Because if you're not, you want to get out of that relationship now. And if you are, you could be okay. But that's not the only way to
I
feel like an adult. But
my encouraging gaslighting meter is pinging really hard at that one as well. So
I don't, well, I mean, it's a story, it's fiction.
no, really, dear, I didn't say that thing. I said, to Blaze.
I said rabbits eat lettuce. Yeah.
And to
I love that
me,
you went for Princess Bride Note for South Park, but
because that misunderstanding trope is such like a key part of romance, holiday or not, to me, I just want people communicate badly. We are 4 people on a panel who I know enough about enough of us that I know that we are good communicators or work hard to be good communicators. Lots of people aren't. So to me, the issue isn't, I just want a romance about people who can communicate well, so much as I want a romance about people who try to communicate, even if they're bad at it. I want a romance about people who, if they misunderstand something and are not willing to confront it, there's been enough character work that I understand why. I want the misunderstandings to be grounded in something, as opposed to just like, we really need one at the 37-minute mark, which is literally how these scripts get written.
I mean, if we're going to focus on the conflict resolution, I want to see, just because you know what happened doesn't make your feelings go away. And you shouldn't have to perform I'm better now. And let's actually have comfort rituals, which are not, let me buy you flowers and a piece of jewelry.
I didn't mean it. Here's a puppy.
I have a story about a pet that I received as a birthday present when I wasn't wanting one. So that was the whole story. But the other thing for me is that I've always had a really complicated relationship to the Hallmark Christmas stories, because I do come from a cultural tradition where we have a winter go back home holiday, but it's not the one you bring a partner home to. And so that's a really big confusion, because every year I have this whole conversation of what do I want to do about Japanese New Year, which is a religious holiday, even though my peers in Japanese America will not necessarily think of it that way anymore. We've had a lot of impact on the continuity of our traditions. But for me, this is a religious holiday, and I don't really want to bring someone home and explain what all of the unusual, even for a Japanese person, foods that are the ritual foods of this holiday. And yet it's, in the context of going back to recipes again, it's a holiday. There are ritual foods that you want to have that are part of your your ritual, you expect to have them. If you don't have this thing, it's not the holiday, right? Whether it's eggnog or whatever piece of roast protein or all these other things. And I've rarely seen the story of the integration of the partner whose New Year's is Hoppin' John, and you know, you have to have that or it's not New Year's, and you have to eat it for this meal. And then I'm happy to have it later in the day, but there's a conflict. When does it have to be? Who are you too full with everything else? And I don't want to spend my New Year's morning explaining all the weird things. And I don't want to spend all of December prepping you on, so you won't do it on December 1st or January 1st, because then I'm already exhausted. But with that said, yeah, the one I want to see is the Love Actually sort of version of queerness and diversity and retail workers. And we couldn't go home because we had to work Christmas Eve, and so we're going to get together, and the Chinese restaurant is overfull, and oh my God, Sam is going to see her family at the Chinese restaurant, so that's too much drama.
So you're asking for like the Bones season 1 Christmas special?
I don't know,
Literally?
I haven't seen it. Tell me about it. I'll go watch it, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah.
Which-
Yeah, they're all trapped at work. There is a manufactured conflict that results in them having to be sealed into a building, but
Okay, so that's a bottle story.
yeah, but
I don't want a bottle story. I want people wandering in and out because somebody had the
well,
all day
people
open
wander in and
house.
out to visit them through the glass.
Okay.
So there is external content. But so what's our setting for our ideal story? Does everybody have the same setting? Do folks want like an urban setting? Do we want to come to places? Do we want to travel for our holiday? Or are we looking at like go home? Is go home so integral to this genre that we need to do a go home?
Or you can flip it and do that thing where it's like, the 3 roommates were like, okay, we're hosting. Because I have, and I'm married, so my situation is different now. But for the first time in the last couple of years, I've been a host for holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a whole different vibe. I had no idea what that was going to be like. And I think that's interesting. I think if you put characters in things that they don't do every single year, that creates a lot more room for both explaining things to the audience and putting everybody not so rooted in the same routine that they can be open to new possibilities without being dogmatic about how those possibilities should be accepted by other people.
I don't know how many times anybody's depicted the scene, which is an integral part of my gatherings of people, where you're trying to align everybody's food sensitivities and allergies and avoidances and trying to come up with a menu. And are you going to color code things?
And not as a joke where you
I would really love though the first act conflict to be, well, no, I love your sticker idea, but so-and-so's colorblind.
Right. Or
and not play for a joke. And I really want the character to be fraught about it because they want it to be so perfect. I would like to have a kind of perfect that isn't about the picket fence and the holiday greeting card, the unironic holiday greeting card version. I want the ironic holiday greeting card version that makes a perfect, this is the future the liberals want. I want that one.
I would also love to give that to somebody like other than the lesbian couple, because I feel like when you do have moments that are even close to that, it is some very stereotype, crunchy lesbian couple. Like I used to live in Park Slope. Those people are lovely, but like, let's have other people also care if their guests will die of allergies. That would be delightful.
I really like, grad student first holiday away from home, and we're going to get all of our friends, and including the barista that you've been flirting with all year. I think there's a lovely like queer Friendsgiving story that isn't Friendsgiving.
all right, so who falls in love in this plot? Does
Do
someone
they
have
fall in love, or do they fall into bed? What are we doing here?
or are they already in love? Are we talking about like an existing couple, or are we talking about like roommates, like now everybody's family is in this house and oh my God, there was only one bed?
I'm very in favor of I've known this person for 5 years and I really like hanging out with them, but I seem to like hanging out with them more lately. I wonder what that's about sort of plots. I'm really fond of there aren't that many rough edges necessarily to smooth away, but there's an opportunity for something new here kind of plots.
Didn't we used to have a whole bunch of what do you mean you manipulated me under the mistletoe for reasons, really? Stories? Was that just like a sitcom thing, or where am I remembering that from?
Oh, from everything, but that's like one of the charming 90s sexual assault tropes. Like,
Of which there are many.
could we do a
So
manipulated
many.
you under the mistletoe and then got consent?
How about you're
Really?
under the mistletoe and then you have a consent discussion under the mistletoe?
I think
Right?
I think
Seriously?
probably the way to go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
Well, I think probably the way to do that would be that you would have to have a bunch of cases where it didn't happen. If you're doing it, it needs to be a running gag where here you are and oops, you've met the delivery guy, the pizza delivery guy under the mistletoe, and both of you are like, ha, and don't do anything about it. And here you've met, your grandma and it's a kiss on the cheek or
I
whatever.
want a running gag. I want people moving the mistletoe around because people go, this is such a terrible place to put the mistletoe. That's just setting up too many bad situations. And then you move it and then you still have the same problem. So the mistletoe ends up being the thing that you're following around and you get to see all the rooms in the house that way.
Also, when whoever you're having in the relationship gets there, it is so easy to just pause and have that moment that stretches and one person to ask the other, can I kiss you? And the answer doesn't have to be yes. It can be like, I never thought of that before. I'm going to go think about that. I'll get back to you. Right? You can do that and it can be hot.
That person can
be
initiate, right? Because they know the other person, they already know the other person wants it.
It would be amusing if that initiation occurred the first time where they thought the mistletoe was, and they look up and roommate has moved it because they didn't want it there. So now the moment's blown and they're like, oh, well, now there's no excuse.
I like that. I like that as a you've got.
I think a problem that I know all of you to different degrees, but I'm looking at Kat's face, and I think some of the problem here is we're all very direct people, and we're trying to imagine a trope that relies on people not being direct. And I think that is a struggle that we are actually having here from a creative standpoint.
I literally depend on my co-author for that.
Well, we're talking about that then. Can we say something that I would like to never see in any romantic movie ever again in my life is the public proposal?
Mm.
A public marriage proposal is a hostage situation.
Okay.
The Gilded Age.
I know people who want that, but you should know what they want.
Can we make the opening scene the public proposal that they're running away from because they had to say no? It's now a disaster. Mom and dad are mad at them. Prospective mom-in-law and they're just sitting here going, my entire world is full of people who wanted me to do a thing that didn't respect me. So now we have, this is the prelude scene, and then we're going to have not going to find a romance, going to find a place to just recover from this thing.
Right. I'm not going home this year.
Right.
I'm staying here and I'm surrounding myself with the people that I've made my family.
Or you and your hypothetical fiance were supposed to go home to your parents for Thanksgiving and now he's still going home.
I want it to be at the airport. He says, I didn't want to pop the question in front of your parents. But, and there you are, you're about to board.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And you turn around and like the stewardesses have like signs.
And he's done
flash mob,
yes, he has a flash mob going for you.
Also, that's the most literal demonstration of how it's a hostage situation, because not only is he expecting you to say yes, you now have to get in a tin can and sit next to him, and you can't even like breathe.
Your luggage
from
is
it.
checked through.
Yeah, there's with
no
space
all the
from
presents for your family.
Okay, so let's make this better. Let's up the stakes. This is on your layover.
Ooh. So now
you have to call your one Facebook friend in this city and be like, can you pick me up? I couldn't get on the plane.
So then you'd be meeting their whole found family, because they'd be welcoming you into their, when I was,
Some people you know from social media already.
when I was in my early 20s, we always called it Orphan Christmas. We also called it Vampire Christmas, because usually we would get 15 or 20 people over and spend the whole day watching horror movies. But it was very very elastic. There was always room for another 2 or 3. So to be welcomed into that group.
Also, the nice thing about bringing in the out of towner into the orphans festive gathering is that now there's an excuse for everybody doing intros.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's one.
And now there's.
Go ahead.
But yeah, no, I like this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have the public proposal and the layover dodge, and now we're in our group of people. Now we're not in the city, but there's not necessarily an expectation that we're not going back to our city. Maybe do we work remote? Are we going to stay? Am I jumping the gun here? Are we going to stay in this city, or are we going to discover that the person that we click with at Orphan Christmas lives in our same city, just like a different neighborhood, so we never cross paths? Because
well, my other question is, this person that we're discovering, is this somebody who's totally new to, you know, our protagonist, who we haven't really defined in terms of gender or anything else, or is it somebody they've known online forever? They're in this circle of friends, but they've like never met before.
I want to go with that one, because I feel like I want to tag on to the stuff that Jennifer was saying earlier about, I know this person well enough to know that I'm interested in spending time with them. We've talked on the phone, we've hung out. That's never happened to me.
So what I don't want to do is I've been putting friendship points into this, and now that you've broken up, now it's my turn.
So
Yeah, for sure, no Konami code.
The easy
Really.
way around that is to make it a sibling. You're visiting your college roommate, and it's her Orphan Christmas.
Are you actually ready for this if you've just gotten surprise proposal and broke up?
Right.
I don't think
the problem.
I think
there's a pacing issue.
Right. So I think actually what we end up with in my fantasy version is that you just are having this, I was accepting this picket fence life. Now I have to wonder, my friends must have known about this flash mob. Nobody told me about it. What's going on? And can I actually trust this other social media friend thing? But it's very seductive. And also, I'm not sure I'm ready for anybody new. But do I like you? Do I not like you? Do I even want to live in my city anymore? I do, though. I love my job. And to have that person actually doing all the interrogation without being too heavy-handed about it, and I don't quite know where that goes.
Well, I think it goes to 5 years later. Like, I think this is our backstory for why they're not with anyone when this movie opens. They now have trust issues. They're seeing a therapist. They're questioning their job because they thought they were up for a promotion, but their job isn't really going anywhere. And maybe they get an opportunity to move cities with their job.
Alternately, the 5 years later can happen in the last 5 minutes of the movie, because if our minor antagonist at the beginning pressed her to bring him home to her family and she wasn't sure she was ready, through this flash mob where she couldn't get away from him, but she was already on the trip, then the thing that sets up our hero for her as appropriate is that whoever that is, she or he is going, okay, well, let's not rush this.
My other question, which sort of is what you're thinking of, is what if, because we have a large group of people, so let's say it's a 2-hour movie, is it actually a movie that takes place over 3 Christmases? You know, so you have, and then the first one, she's just had this horrible thing happens and gets to see somebody else's long-term relationship resolve in a more exciting, positive way. Like somebody asks somebody to move in with them and they've been together forever, and then you meet all the characters and she starts this flirtation. And then in the second year, somebody else gets a happy story that again represents a different type of relationship or whatever, and you see her thing progress. And then at the third year, it starts progressing seriously, and then, like, you know, takes a focus. And then it's, you know, I don't want to be like, oh, instead of 4 weddings and a funeral, it's 3 Christmases and a New Year's. But I do wonder if it's something like
Right.
that.
Or
So
are we
the-
open to, we actually have a question. Like, is there a way to make this satisfying without the happily ever after?
There is, but it's no longer a romance, just
I
statistically.
want to change the parameters around our protagonist's job, by the way.
Okay.
I want the job to disappear because it went with the boyfriend, because it was a family business that
Mhm.
they were working for. So
A
saying
family
no,
business,
make a
or is he
big
like
step
her
away.
superior in a bigger?
No, I don't. Well, I feel like her superior sets her up to be, why were you so stupid?
Well, if he's
Okay.
a startup bro, it isn't necessarily a scenario of superior if she's helping hold up the company, but
But I would like the breakup to be part of the, you had to break up with everything, right?
Right.
And it's a
Mhm.
real change of paradigm, but not because big cities are bad, but because lockstep formula, all of a sudden the facade shatters, and when one corner of it starts to crumble, everything collapses, right? And
If-
like,
if our protagonist thought they were finished and thought everything was set up, and then, you know, what legs do you have left under you if you've slowly stopped hanging out with your friends anymore and slowly stopped doing all your things anymore? Maybe you only have this one Facebook friend to call.
I kind of want him to say, oh, but I talked it out with your best friend and she totally said it, you love it. And then you're just like, how does my best friend not know me to the
Right.
point where this was kept from me, and who else was in on it?
Mm.
And for it to just be, wow, I've been getting gaslit by everybody in my life. I'm realizing that this is not what I want.
There's also just like, I think we've all experienced a point where like you break off. I'm being really normative here. Sorry. If anybody hasn't, it is a common experience, I think, to break up with someone and lose most of your friend group, whether or not it was a bad breakup or an abusive relationship. Although that's the classic, is that the abusive partner may take the friend group with them simply because they've been able to lay some groundwork. But just because it becomes too awkward to constantly be in a place with your ex, and you're just like, you know what's easier is just me not going to parties with this friend group so I don't have to see this person. And it can happen with a best friend breakup, it can happen with a romantic breakup, that you, when you sever ties with a person in your life, sometimes the friend group goes with them, and that's
Sometimes the friend group just gets away from the whole thing too. You know, it's not even that the ex necessarily takes the friend, but like your involvement in that group wanes,
Well,
and sometimes theirs does too. And like your
if
life
you were
just
the
shifts.
house that everybody came to hang out at, and you were the core couple for a whole social
Mhm.
network, then it just dissolves because there's no longer that, that
right. If you're
pair
not having
bonded
Thursday game
cluster in
night
the middle.
at your house.
Also, one of the other things that I don't see addressed often in these stories is that when you go from being in a friends group of couples, when you stop being a couple, you lose all of your friends because they feel really awkward having their single friends.
Mhm.
Or they start doing the most egregious and obnoxious matchmaking. Or if you have a different kind of reputation, everybody starts clinging to their partner a little too closely around you, and you just go, I'm not getting shoved out, I'm shoving myself out. So there's all these other ways of dissolving things without it having been a clear pattern of, this is an abusive thing that the person didn't wake up to.
Mhm.
I'd really like to set the story up so that the person was allegedly smart and alert and doing all the things and knew what all the red flags were and everything else, and is discovering, because people weren't acceding to communication as important, to finding out that everybody was operating on assumptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a romance with the concept of conscious communication and consent.
I also think it's really important for these stories I think a lot of them create heroines that are incredibly isolated because everything falls away from them. So this, whatever relationship they may get into after that is, it feels inherently unsafe for many viewers because they don't have a support system, are their choices about survival versus something else. And I think Kat's absolutely right that there are ways to really have somebody's life shift and have huge gaps in it and to be reevaluating it without making them so vulnerable to future bad actors. Like that shift and that lack of what you previously had can happen without being radically harmed.
How do you know the next guy isn't actually, you thought the one previous was a fairy tale maybe. How do you know the next one isn't also going to end up with the cascading disaster that the last one was, and that we don't talk about how you prevent that because it's tricky.
Right. And
So
I don't
can the story
think
tell
we
that?
want to give the idea that it can necessarily be prevented, that there's a thing that you can do that is smart enough or good enough. I mean, certainly there are steps you can take. There are, red flags that you would not ignore in your next relationship, but learning to trust yourself again and trust your instincts, and even, for a lot of people who didn't necessarily have a childhood where they were allowed to have good boundaries and honor their instincts, what does it look like to learn to do that, and who supports you while you do that?
There's also this post that I see going around on social media, which is like, oh, when you start dating somebody new, if they like ask you out somewhere, just like sort of say no, like in a very low key, like not game changing way, like, oh, you suggested this cafe, what about this other cafe? Like just give them a slight change to see if they're like open to it or if they feel overly challenged. And I know to a lot of people it seems silly, but having been in relationships that were kind of icky at various points in my life, and having my co-writer just went through a divorce that had a lot of really, really awful stuff going on in it. Just the idea of, can you challenge someone in a way that's not even challenging them? It's just offering an alternative. And how do they react to that? I would love to see that. But I would also love to see that not being like, oh, he passed that test, everything's fine. Because there are
No
plenty of
green
people
flags.
who, right, there is no such thing as a green flag. There's just a, okay, we can keep exploring this flag. So I would love to see that process, and even that recognition of, oh man, there is no such thing as a green flag. There's just an absence of alarms.
Yeah.
So speaking of flags, I want to flag that we are kind of coming up on the hour that we usually take for the panel. I know we all talked about having the opportunity to extend this to an hour and a half. Do people want to keep going?
I have time if everybody else does.
Yeah, I have time. So
because I would love to keep talking about this with you. So if anybody else needs to step away or only blocked off an hour for this and needs to run, the whole panel discussion will be up on YouTube. Like, subscribe, bell, all of the happy things. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, we have a tip jar. It helps us keep the lights on and pay for our paid Zoom subscription so that we can actually have hour-and-a-half long panels and not 40-minute panels. So we appreciate you. And with that, let's come back to there are no green flags. There's an opportunity to have some red flags. So we have now gotten our heroine. I think we're all assuming that it's going to be a heroine. Like I
think
know
that's the viewpoint that most of these movies have, because they assume that's who's watching it and identifying with it. And I don't really know that that's true.
Unless we're going to have we can make this clear, but if we are starting the story with a proposal, it's a really unusual relationship if it's cishet and the girl is proposed to the guy. So since we had a proposer who was out of bounds, I think we have established.
Right. Okay. So now we're good.
Yeah. And I would also like to say that on one hand, you can have the heroine be bisexual or whatever. I'm always wary of stories that start with the male X is somehow out of bounds and atrocious.
You
And
know
then
what?
she hooks up with a girl because then everybody goes, oh, it's because she was traumatized.
As long as we're playing subvert everything, I want to subvert it even harder. I want 2 non-binary characters at the start. And I want an awkward sort of, I thought you would want this, and I thought that you wanted this to be super romantic. So
this is
what I did.
Form normativity. I love
And
the
that-
idea that our central problem is that the other character, the antagonist character, performed normativity too hard at our protagonist.
Can we let the characters get back together after 3 years of struggling as our story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that sound like a satisfying
That's a classic
thing
Hallmark.
instead of discard and move on?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they can both re-examine their lives. I don't know why not. How do we get this character back into the group? So if we have, are we taking away all of our heroines, our heroists job,
They're
their
heroines now.
no, I can't. I just watched The Boy and
I'm
the Hero.
sorry.
That is
I'm
too much
sorry.
visual.
I knew that was loaded.
Too much
I'm
visual.
sorry.
Storks,
Our storks.
our storks. So our storks, our sheep, our what is
Cranes.
the clownfish? Our clownfish.
Okay.
So they change genders whenever they need to. So our clownfish,
Hyenas.
no.
They're really interestingly gender ambiguous compared to everybody's expectations.
Y'all don't.
I feel like there's a lot of people watching this right now who need to go Google a whole bunch of animals and learn all sorts of interesting things.
So many interesting things. Yeah. So our clownfish, we have stripped away Clownfish One's job, Clownfish One's friend group, Clownfish One's partner. How if we're going to give back the partner, does it make sense to strip away the friend group, or does it make more sense for it to just be now sort of a looser group?
Now that we've tried to do a can they get back together, are we going to establish that the clownfish what the hell, I'm naming them clownfish what the hell and clownfish I thought you wanted, okay? So
Okay.
did clownfish what the hell overreact, or are we going to say that this was a rational reaction?
That's a
rational reaction.
It has to be a rational reaction.
So
because if we don't treat it as a rational reaction, we're ending up in normativity hell.
Normativity. So
and we're going to gaslight our
follow. So do we follow clownfish I thought you wanted path back to understanding what the hell they did, or do we just leave it off on the sidelines in the wings?
We need to at least know what the path is, even if it's not getting a lot of screen time, because otherwise, why do we, the viewer, even trust it?
So in that case, I guess we can't strip away all the friends, because there can still be mentions here or there. Hey, I heard Clownfish, was moving up in the job or whatever. I heard Clownfish was.
I like the idea of doing this through a series of counseling meetings.
Okay.
I want
mandatory counseling.
No. So here's my thought. I'm pretty sure there's a hole in it because this is just something I just came up with right now. But I trust you all to find my plot holes and problematic bits. So clownfish, what the fuck is like, I cannot even talk to you. I don't ever want to see you again. I hate you. I feel so betrayed. This is awful. And so that's the starting premise. And we have the scene of each of them doing this, like split screen or whatever. They're doing their individual miserable holidays. But I think clownfish, but I thought it needs to start making overtures and trying to figure out how to respectfully go, I'm really sorry I screwed up this badly. You're totally right. This was a monumental screw up. Can we repair this? Right?
Are they going to start with another big gesture?
The discussion of how that happens is an interesting now this is a novel and not a movie in my head. I need to figure out how to do the movie version.
I think
But-
I just figured out how to do the movie part.
Oh, tell me.
Well, I think the only way to make it work are people who are forced to see each other intermittently, but don't necessarily like work for the same.
I was
What
gonna-
if we
I
start?
just-
It's the airport. Why, if they're both work on planes, like if they're pilots or
Oh.
stewards or whatever, if because you're constantly crossing paths with other flight crews, you can have that. No, I'm still mad at you. Okay, I've been thinking about, all right, maybe I'll talk to you next time I run into you at like whatever airport. And you can have it slowly descend from 3 minutes of no to, all right, I'm hearing you, because they can't avoid each other.
That's one possibility. The other one I have is, did we only fall into each other because we're both non-binary and we were the first person that like from college, and so there's a reunion and an alum network to play with at that point.
Right.
What the hell? I thought that we were both student activists in this organization, so we both had a shared understanding. Why is it that when it became about love and commitment and life partners, you suddenly reverted, right? Which is what's happened here.
Right.
And it's a thing that happens. People are super progressive with everything except for their own household, right?
I mean, you're saying that, and to me, the line from Clownfish Bad Choices is very much like, I was trying to be a grown-up in the only way I knew how. It's like, well, that's a terrible way.
Right. And then I was gonna say, I literally just read a fanfic that has this sort of orbiting, we were working together and then we weren't. And the other two possibilities are academia and gig musicians.
Something artistic, yeah. Which
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you're getting hired to gig, if you're getting hired, you're gonna end up in shows with this person, and you used to be
gig musicians or techs.
Techs makes sense to me.
I feel like musicians make sense, but that's, I think, because my parents are musicians, my sisters.
I think I want it to be techs because I don't want to tech this show. Oh, can you be a fill-in? Oh, fuck, you're working this gig. Crap. I've worked so hard to make sure that, and it does kind of set up the whole, like, your social group used to be you'd tech the same show and then you'd go out and hang out together afterward,
and that lets people still have
contact
with a friend group.
And by doing it as techs, you're not stepping on the, if they're both performers, then we have the whole excuse of, well, I thought you would want a public proposal because we live our lives in public. And techs are just people living their lives not in public.
So we're looking at a really dramatic public proposal then. In
Yeah.
this scenario.
All of their friends are
dramatic.
Yeah.
Right? And feeling super betrayed by all your friends because, like, don't you all know that I hate this? I'm always the one who never.
Right, like literally
I was so happy when the pandemic happened because then I could hide even more of my face and nobody would say anything. Yeah. No, I like our Clownfish tech story so far.
Okay.
So where are we in terms of genetic family for these people? If we're going the both of them are non-binary, I'm not super happy with and so their families abandoned them or they had to abandon their families narrative that is so common.
No, I think they were definitely going home to more welcoming family, or maybe even to both of their families. Like, if we're talking they both came out of the same alumni relationship or the same.
I like the idea that the in-law that now doesn't, had hoped to be an in-law and was in on this is so devastated and like wants to be able to contact them, but we have these stories of, are you still I really liked you as you though, and not as my kid's appendage. And so they can even be the conduit for, hey, how's it going? I'm sending you a birthday card, here's your favorite cookies.
Yeah.
How's it going?
I would love to have us model how you have those boundaries around still being close to a family member. Like, I had, we had a divorce in my generation of my family, And there was definitely like, there was no question that everyone wanted to stay close to everyone. But like, how do you balance that when somebody needs space? How do you balance, is contact from the family welcome? How do you balance, I wish you could tell so and so, like in our case, there's a co-parenting situation, so people still have contact anyway, but how do you balance like
I
talking to your
like
mom?
I like mom, leave them alone.
Mhm.
And no, mom, I feel betrayed by you because you said it was a good idea and you went along with it anyway. You didn't talk to them when you could have been an intermediary, and you want to be an intermediary now. And who's the bad guy here? And like a whole thing of really, I'd like the bad guy to be normativity and expectations and not, but really, really hurt, upset feelings
And everybody gets to
not
feel its feelings.
and for mom and dad or whoever the parents are of clownfish bad ideas to be struggling themselves with what's the respectful thing to do here. Do we actually need to say goodbye?
Mhm.
So
I think there's a lot of
maybe that
room.
works.
We haven't talked a whole lot about what would be humorous in this, and they have to be funny. So I think there's a
Right.
lot of room for humor with the family trying to figure out exactly what the new bounds are, and maybe overcorrecting too hard.
I want one of the first holidays after the breakup to be one that one of the parents had automated or siblings had automated the greetings for because they were optimizing their life,
Right.
and it accidentally goes out to both of them as if they were a couple saying happy some kind of thing that's not either one of them's personal day.
Oh,
Awkward
right,
group
right. So
chat.
they've got it in the what's it, you put your Christmas card in and it just sends your card to all your
Right.
list.
And they didn't block the sibling because they only remembered to block
Yeah,
clownfish bad ideas in that first round of I hate you forever.
that works.
Oh, I even think about like my wife and I have a shared email for some stuff because it's just easier. Like we each have our own emails, and like
Mhm.
for cards and stuff, we just have a shared email because why otherwise? And both of us should have it forward to our personal accounts. So, we don't have to remember to log into it. But if something comes in, I was like, oh man, somebody emailed me on that. I could just see them just being like, oh no. Why didn't we close that down? Oh no.
We don't talk enough about that when we're talking about disentangling lives too. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for humor in, I'm living in this house and I didn't realize that the power bill that auto pays out of my account is still in your name and I need to move. And the power
Or it's holiday,
turn off the power.
or it's the holiday season and I've gone home to see my family and we are watching movies on the Netflix that is your Netflix that you just removed me from like 20 minutes to the end, and now that's awkward, and my parents
gotta
think
be
it's
like a murder
technology,
mystery, right?
but if I explain it to them,
Yeah. Yeah, that's solid. If you're still on all the family, you're still on the
Also,
family Nintendo Online account. You're still
suddenly you need to ask your friends, hey, can I glom onto your, because this is out beyond my budget. And that's how you explain your breakup to your friend.
Oh
I
God,
need
yeah.
your Hulu.
I need your Hulu.
fact-
We broke up.
In fact, I really love this as the opening scene, which lets us have all of the breakup disaster in a flashback as opposed to doing it in the minute.
Right.
And you start with the opening shot of frantically texting, okay, who can I ask? Because somebody's already said no.
Yeah.
And you don't really want to explain it again, but you're going crazy, you're alone, you need something to do, so you're trying to find and you don't want to pay for it. So now you're texting like your third friend on the list, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've gotten good at telling this now.
Also, when you're doing that, they can all have all the people who said no can be like,
Group chat.
yeah, well, my ex and his cousin both are on mine. I can't add a fourth one. What? Right? It's not like you're not the only person that's ever had this problem.
There's just going to be a
Everyone
very
has that
dated
problem.
story immediately because these things churn so fast, but also these things are like story of the year, right? It's
Right.
not
Yeah,
like
it
you're
is
watching
supposed
the
to be
one
like
from
an
10 years
artifact
ago
of the
again,
time.
are you?
There's like, what is more dated than You've Got Mail?
Seriously. I like
Mm.
the notion of I can't put you on my Netflix. The entire polycule is on the Netflix and we don't have any more slots.
Yes. Yeah. I notice you lost your streak on Duolingo. Yeah, it's such a pain in the ass to do it with ads. Don't you guys have a
Yeah, there was a vicious little personal essay I read some years ago about a girl knew that her relationship with her boyfriend really was over when his computerized scale showed a weight that was 5 pounds under hers. She looked into her account and it had still been counting his weight, and then it counted the weight of whoever had been staying with him recently and had been putting that down as her data because she was still linked to it and this new person wasn't.
Ooh,
Yeah, or it's like when you're
So many.
watching the Netflix and suddenly you don't watch horror movies and your entire profile is recommending horror movies and you're like,
Mhm.
oh,
What's
okay.
going on here? So there's so many little things you might not even think about that would need to be disentangled.
I like having this sort of illusion of chain stories where you don't have to make all the other stories, but you get the snippets of everybody else's Hallmark holiday disaster story in the search for the
oh yeah.
streaming media account. So you
And
find
you
out
can
that
get the
somebody's
quirky
polycule
families like
exploded,
Sunny.
somebody found out about a cheating thing, somebody has just added their sweetie that's moving in with them, so they're all full up. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you about this relationship. We had it kind of on the download, but now we're official because we decided to move in for the holidays, and do all the other stories in the quest. And so you're just sitting here going, oh man, my entire, it's all shaken up anyway.
Also for, for everyone watching this, like this is how you structurally solve there shouldn't only be one issue of diversity, which is really, really hard in romance because people just want a tight focus on the couple. How do you do that so no one person is the representative for all people like them? And that's how you do it.
So structurally for this narrative in particular, what happens when they get to really the very last thing they have to take the name off of? Is that our midpoint or is that the climax?
That has to
of
be the
movie?
crux. That has to be the turning point. Whatever the last thing is, changing the microchip address for the cat.
I think you forgot, and then something is the last thing that you suddenly have popped up on, and you're looking at it, and there's been a bunch of other stuff going, and you have to decide, all right, am I actually severing this, or are we going to keep this one and it's going to be the new nucleus?
No,
Does
I've got
the
it.
audience get to know?
I've
When
got
they're
it.
presented with that problem, does the audience
Rowan,
get
what?
to know?
The cat runs away and gets returned to the other partner because the microchip data is still the other partner's data. And now they have to get together. They're getting parent trapped by their cat.
This is humor.
And people love pets in these things.
And it puts them in a place where they have to actively communicate and unblock each other because somebody just handed you your ex's cat. Whatever your hurt feelings are, you agreed that this was your ex's cat.
Is the cat happy to see them?
Oh yeah.
Moved
well, cats aren't happy to see anybody.
Have you moved, or you can't have moved because your information?
I don't know.
I was trying to make it that you can't have the cat anymore, but I don't think you can manage that.
Whoever has the cat has moved.
Yeah.
So.
Right, which is why the cat gets returned to the old location at the other partner.
Conceivably, it's Clownfish Bad Decisions cat.
You just have a new roommate who's allergic to cats.
Yeah.
We'll just make it simple.
But now you've got one of them is going to unblock the other, whether it is person whose cat just got returned, like they're calling and they're like, oh no, we returned that cat to its owner. Or whether it's somebody just handed me my ex's cat. And now I'm trying to reach out to everyone in our friend group. Hey, can anybody get in touch with Clownfish? I have the cat.
I kind of like the idea
that mom was still in contact.
Mom would be great.
I kind of like the idea of Clownfish Bad Decisions going to multiple of the friends and the friends saying, no, we love you, but no, I'm not giving you their phone number.
I think they did that before the cat.
Yeah.
I think that scene of trying to get their number happened before.
Well, and here's our
Because the
miscommunication,
friends are now having good boundaries, but they're having boundaries that are too good.
which is a reasonable miscommunication, which is this person is asking for the number. They have a good reason now to need it, but now we have the
It
miscommunication.
sounds fishy.
They don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say, it's not like they're, knocking on doors while holding the cat. So
Yeah.
if somebody gets a call being like, oh, this thing, there's going to be different levels of suspicion there. Because some people are going to be like, really? Really? I didn't hear about the cat
They're
running away.
frantic and they're not giving enough of the backstory because they're trying to be efficient. So
Yeah.
they're texting people and just going, hey, can I have Clownfish What the Fuck's new number? I have an urgent thing. And a bunch of people are just going to go, whatever.
And last time you had an urgent thing, it was a wildly inappropriate proposal. No.
Right. We all fucked up the last time you had an urgent thing. We're not going to do that again. Yeah. Okay, so to recap, we have 2 clownfish in an airport. We have a proposal that goes horribly awry with the flash mob, public proposal. Clownfish what the fuck says what the fuck and leaves. Clownfish bad ideas is like, uh-oh. Something happens that holiday. They start disentangling their lives until dun dun dun. Haley Mills the cat. Let's just name the cat Haley Mills. That'd be great. Wouldn't that be perfect?
Have they always named the cat Haley Mills?
Yes. That has always been the cat's name. I guess we might have to name it Lindsay Lohan.
Did they love Christmas movies? Or
Probably.
did they hate them?
Oh. I think we should lampshade it regardless and just be like, I understand that this is the worst Hallmark Christmas movie ever, but did you know?
And so we're saying that mom is the one who has the
normative clownfish loved Christmas movies.
Or the
No.
the two
Clownfish
clownfish.
What the Fuck loves Christmas movies because that's what set up
Right.
Clownfish Bad Ideas to think this was actually the thing they wanted.
Yeah, no, solid. Just goes to show, play fash games, get fash prizes.
This is the sort of scenario I've seen happen, at least at college level. You really love movies where event happens. I thought you would enjoy event. Event was not appreciated. You see this across various views.
I actually got a Sleeping Beauty's Castle proposal when I was way too young and so was the other person.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah, no, I am so, and I would have sworn I told them I was allergic to this, but they were really committed to the idea of fairy tales because they'd grown up in a not fairy tales context. Oh, can we make Clownfish Bad Ideas a single parent household and mom loves them an awful lot, but they have romantic ideas about the clownfish, not the mom.
Yeah.
About nuclear families and all this other stuff because they have a longing for a thing that they think would have been better than the wonderful thing they actually had.
Right.
Yes,
this would have fixed
good.
my childhood. I would never have had any of the traumas when in fact, like, they have a perfectly good parent who is doing the best she can, who is gentle parenting. Like, they're not living in poverty. They're not like, there's nothing externally like, it's
I also
just
like
not normative.
the idea of having to come to, this was a young relationship and you thought that, you just kind of bumped along because you had so much in common and that you actually have to reevaluate and go, did I actually love you or did I like this normative thought of you? And so there's a whole lot of like, how do you figure that out? That I think that you can explore that in the context of a 2-hour movie or a 90-minute movie.
So how do they get back together? They get parent trapped by the cat. Is the cat out because something catastrophic has happened to Clownfish Bad Ideas' living quarters?
I think the cat should just be an escape artist. I don't think we probably need any more catastrophes, but one of my cats is not interested in getting out. The other one will take any opportunity.
And in fact, Yeah, a new cat that
New
apparently.
cat.
Yeah,
New
so the
home,
cat is
old cat.
escaping over and over again. So there's the first cat incident that makes them have to talk to each other, but then the cat keeps doing it that forces them to keep talking to each other.
Oh, I want a completely ridiculous scenario that I'm not sure exists because I don't know about cat shipping enough. I kind of want there to be a reason why, even though the address of the cat has been updated, that there's been a crash in the chip system and this, anything like
This
that
is
can
so
happen. No,
plausible. I don't.
and
Do
that
you remember
now
when I
they're back at paper records or something else or a backup or whatever it is causes the wrong address to come up.
do you remember when I fostered Evie 3 years ago, Kat? They still have not managed to update her chip address from my address to her forever home.
I
Okay,
was
that's
going
a
to
simple,
say,
easy
I
one
also
then.
get calls about cats I've not been involved with for years.
Especially if the cat was ever in a foster situation. Like if they foster failed on this cat, then
Oh,
where the records are supposed to go gets so weird.
is this actually the ex-cat custody or did they used to foster cats? And then now
Oh,
we
so
have
it
a
could be like a
complicated
random cat that,
conversation that has to happen.
It's just a random cat that keeps getting out of its other owner's house. No,
yeah.
I don't think so, because it needs to be like their cat. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to return it. They would just.
How about the address of record is Clownfish Bad Ideas, but that it went to a friend of somebody that was closer to.
But then there's no reason for them to be in the same place. They would just give it to the friend.
Well,
No,
here's
they
the
don't know
thing.
the
It's
friend.
not even about giving the cat physically, right? Because you get the call and somebody with like a
Okay.
chip reader is like, I have this cat, this is the phone number. So
Mhm.
whoever gets the phone call is the person that the cat was not resident with.
Right.
And then they either have the choice of going to pick up the cat and then having to bring it to the other person, or they can call the ex whose number they do not have to be like, cat, what do we do?
Right, because when they get the call, then they can't give the updated number because they don't have it.
Right.
So then they wind up having to take the cat in until
Yeah.
they can get the number.
Are they
Because
still
it's a
living in the
vet,
same
and they're
city
like,
at this point?
What?
Are they still living in the same city at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have them
Yeah.
pecking and still working in the same like relatively
yeah, if they're
large
gonna keep bumping into each
pet
other,
pool.
yeah. But it's gonna be
Yeah,
like
it's just,
different neighborhoods.
yeah.
So where does the handoff happen? Here's your cat in a bag. Nice to see you. Does somebody go to somebody's house? Do they meet in a park and it's all lovely out? Are there a friend group?
I feel like What the Fuck doesn't want Bad Ideas to know where they live at first.
I also am wondering whether the initial plane flight was back to home or if they were having a destination holiday with like extended family.
Mm.
And that mom actually lives in the same town. So then we avoid the out of town trope there.
Okay.
And that also makes getting the luggage back that was on the plane even more fraught.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super awkward. That whole disentangling is super awkward. Okay, so how do we
Disentangling
get to
is
our
awkward.
happily ever after for our clownfish? We got the cat. We've got the friends group.
I think they call mom. I think Bad Ideas calls mom to say, I don't know what to fucking do. All of my friends, I've been working so hard and all of my friends still just trust me and they won't give me this thing. Mom, what do I do? I know I'm X years old, but I don't even know anymore. And mom just goes, so actually,
Have you tried apologizing though?
well, so actually I've been talking to them and
Yeah,
do you all want to meet at my house because they've been
that's
coming
neutral.
over for coffee every once in a while because their mom lives in a completely different town.
Awkward meal, you guys. Awkward meal.
I kind of like the book ending of you're going to meet parents when everything goes to hell. And then you actually get to have this dinner together that you didn't have. But things are different now.
And
Although
you find out
also,
that
like, because the mom now is in this weird position, right? Because the last thing the mom wants to do is blindside clownfish what the fuck with, oh, and now my child wants to talk to you, you know, like she doesn't want to look like she's setting something up. So she has to be very clear and very gentle and very, this is
Okay, so
very
she's got to
optional.
call what the fuck and say, hey, that idea is called, they have the cat. Is it okay if I give them your
I
number?
know I've been respecting your desire to completely stay out of it, and I haven't been giving you updates about them because we had that conversation about boundaries, and I treasured my connection with you enough that I didn't want to mess with that on behalf of my bio kid, because you're a kid of my heart and I wanted to keep that regardless. But the cat.
But the cat. So can I give them your number? Would you like to, I can
How do
arrange
you want to do this?
a meet up here. I can, like, the mom can make some offers. The mom can have some emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Real tired of parents in these movies just being like cardboard cutouts.
Mhm.
Especially because, you know, a lot of the people who are watching the movies are parents, right?
I like the idea of mom telling bad ideas. Oh, kid, I am so sorry. You didn't tell me you were harboring that. And if I'd known, I would have told you not to do this. And you must have known this was a bad idea because you didn't tell me, even though you told all your friends.
That's one thing I was thinking. One of us said, I didn't want to do this in front of your parents, but you're doing it in front of God and literally everybody else. Why didn't you want to do it in front of the parents then?
Right. You had
I
one brain
didn't want
cell.
to make mom feel bad about our storybook. Is
Ooh.
bad ideas,
Mm.
internal monologue about why they did it this way.
So somebody needs to get spanked then a little bit, because how dare you say that the life that I raised you in, that I'm so happy with, is
The
negative.
the other thing is the mom can provide choices about this cat transfer situation, and the choice that clownfish what the fuck might make is, I will come over and see you and grab the cat that has been dropped off, and we don't actually have that conversation. But if you've ever had a cat escape a carrier in a large house that
Now
is
you're
not their own,
hunting through the house.
The
Yeah.
torture
So
was
they
going to
show
happen at
up
the
at the
house, but the
scheduled
cat
time.
has escaped the carrier, so they're still there looking for the cat.
Yeah, and do not call clownfish what the fuck, because they're like literally trying to figure out where in the house, like what cabinet this cat has lurched its way into. And then
After an
clownfish
hour,
what the
mom
fuck
gives
knocks on the
in.
door
Just
and is
to
like,
make things a
oh,
little bit more thing, I want mom to have suddenly needed like knee replacement surgery or something that makes her not able to clamber around after the cat, because mom otherwise would have said go, but she
right,
can't.
right. Yes.
And she's going to suddenly notice a time, realize that
Well, you can hear the car pull up.
well, something like that, or an alarm or something. And so she's going to go, oh crap, I forgot to tell what the fuck. And so she's going to be frantically trying to tell what the fuck. You might not want to come in because
Right.
I'm so sorry. And what the fuck then goes, did you find the cat? And it's
Or what the
no.
fuck?
So
Oh, this is another good miscommunication moment. That's a reasonable miscommunication. Their friends have been blowing up their phone all day. They just put it on silent. They have no idea that mom's trying to get in touch with them.
I think there's a possibility of a bunch of things, but I think that probably for humor value, you do have mom who's been like on point the whole time is the breaking point that causes the final meetup.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wanted to hold the cat one last time, or some nonsense that caused
Right.
Yeah.
the cat to escape the cage.
I want to see my grand kitty.
I kind of like the idea of a nibbling there who really desperately wants to see the cat. And they're like, oh, well, if we do all the right things, it'll work really well. But then, and they were going to
But
be
it's
in
still
a
a cat.
bedroom with the cage and open it up and it was going to be safe. But then the door got open and now the cat is like, who knows where.
Yeah, there's all kinds of potential for humor there. And it's
Yeah.
definitely got to be a cat. Like, you can't do this with a dog. Maybe a bird you could do it with, but a bird isn't going to.
Birds are
Yeah.
too fragile. We don't want to do that.
Cats are so
Cat
easy.
is
Yeah.
good.
And cats do stuff like this. Like there's definitely like my co-writer got a call the other day from her neighbor being like, there's a cat on your roof. Is it yours? And she's like, I don't know. Let me go see. And she's like, oh yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, Horatio definitely
Is
gets
this
on my-
is this movie called The Cat Came Back?
It
Do we
could be.
lampshade it?
Could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, but of course it's going to be the Christmas cat came back, right? Like the origin of this cat has to also be holiday because
yeah,
that's
100%.
what we
It's like-
do in these movies.
Oh, this is another reason that Bad Ideas has the bad idea. They gave what the fuck a kitten last year for Christmas. And it
No,
worked.
because I don't want Bad Idea to keep being the worst because then they have too much to make up for.
Maybe they talked about it and they got the Christmas kitten together and they said, you know, hey, we've been talking about getting a cat. Is this something that we want to give?
I think there was a running joke of, hey, do we have to give kitten legitimate married parents?
Oh,
And then it
I
had
love
been a running gag, and one of them was fishing by making that a running gag, and the other one just thought it was a joke.
Yeah, they thought it was a bit. Yeah,
That's really good.
I love that.
So then we have, you know, Bad Ideas thought they were carefully probing.
Yeah, and that's good because you could also like work into the bit what the ridiculous elaborate proposal would be. Spoilers, this is actually how I ended up getting proposed to.
Also I want
Possible.
I think I want What the Fuck to love flash mobs
Yeah,
and to be a flash mob instigator
I
for
don't
like
think
other things.
I don't want them to be
No?
an instigator. I want them to be like a fan though, and to just
An
like watch
appreciator?
the videos.
It's the thing that they love watching
It's
on.
their vicarious pleasure thing. They don't actually want to be in it. They just like the idea of it.
Oh no, they don't want to be in it. They're a person. I was wondering if they're a person who organizes them, like super over involved in. But I like the idea of we just know that that's in their YouTube recommends.
Yeah.
Not just like in their YouTube recommends, but like the thing where like you're sitting on the couch with your partner and like they're always showing you videos of this thing you don't care about, but they really care about.
Now look,
So this is the one time you tried really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we make
Do
it.
the friends all know that this is a wedding proposal flash mob?
I
Or
think
have
at
they
least
been
some
told
should.
this is a cat parents flash mob and they've been hiding it from everybody?
I think to make the flash mob work for the wedding thing, it has to be some hugely romantic song or something, though.
I think there was some level of bad disclosure at some point.
Yeah.
Because they do actually need to
couldn't-
suck somewhere in this.
Yeah, no. I think that the moment that they went, oh no, it's going to be a surprise. They clearly, wedding proposals should not be surprises, and they think they've done the homework. They know this.
Yeah.
But they were clever.
Poor clownfish.
Oh, you know how there's like quote cards to go into various things? I want to use the Scalzi quote about the failure mode of clever is asshole.
I was just thinking that. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. We have run for almost 2 hours and we have a movie plot, y'all. I'm really proud of us. Somebody make this movie. Somebody call Kate McKinnon.
I just love collaboration because none of this could have been solved without all four of us. And that's delightful to me.
I'd like to thank the clownfish and Google. And flash mobs. No, thank you, everyone. I want to thank everyone again for coming, and for all of this work, both unpacking why Christmas movies don't work as a social good. Really, they do have a social effect, but looking at what we can do with those tropes and with the things that we love about a Christmas movie, the humor, the love, the family. I got so many visuals when we were talking about this. I'm actually sad for anyone with aphantasia right now. I'm so sorry that you didn't get to see like the kitty cat and the Christmas lights that I got to see. There's so many things. The cat's in the Christmas tree, by the way.
Yeah, definitely.
100% the cat's in the Christmas tree. And they find it.
But also there's a moment where the cat runs and there's a mistletoe scene.
Yeah, solid.
Yep.
Yeah, mistletoe everything. I love all of this. I love the way all the pieces came together. And thank you everyone. And this is the last Scarlet Quill Society for 2023. We will be back in 2024. I'm trying to decide how many spoilers I should give y'all about our New Year's lineup, but we're going to be talking about, guys, we're going to be talking about books. As you know,
We should have had an advent calendar of spoilers.
oh, it is far too late for an advent calendar of spoilers, and I'm 2 days late on my advent calendar, which is just Reese's Pieces.
We could just do the last part of the holiday season, starting with Yule on to the 31st, like just 10 days or
It's true. So I will say it's definitely about taking some next steps for folks and showing them what the options are and what the chances are. And we are incredibly excited about it and incredibly excited about the panelists that we've been able to line up already. You'll see some familiar faces and some new ones. And until then, like, subscribe, sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss news about it. It's really low key. It's once a month. And if you can afford to leave us a tip, we're gonna have to, pay our accountant next year. So he'd love it if you left us a tip too. Thank you so much for coming, and see you next year.